Borrow a piece of paper from the short. Start signing. Oh, kind of like. Start with you guys. No. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Looks like somebody's already there. Oh, no, that's the book from the library. Okay. Thank you. I don't think it should be this right in here. Oh, yeah. It's very disturbing. You're not joined yet.
Well, yeah, we went to Beekeepers thing at the library and
Okay.
I went to the.
Okay, I'm gonna let you look at this. This is one of our books from the library that we have available for members. Well, sign three of them.
Once you look at it, each one dragon-
Oh, this has got lots of pictures.
So last, I forget what the. Big old page, I guess you guys had a like seminar type thing we did. January.
Yes, we do it every year. Yeah, on camp number. Exactly. what the date is.
That's on Gmail.
What?
It's like, that's goes back, we can decide what we want. She's in, he's there.
I just one more, I just trust it.
Yeah. Yes, with honey on it.
He's digging.
Even better.
Respect.
Can you want to sign in? I need to pull my share. Is she? Okay, has everybody signed the paper yet? I just attended, but you came. You said yes, you've already done it?
Yes.
Okay,
Our moderator is here.
somebody here already?
I am.
Be in the front row.
Hmm?
You must be in the front row.
I can hear better. Better.
Unless you have one cute color. Isn't that one of those? Bring it back. Yeah, well, what I'm trying to do is trying to have a meeting. Bring one and
Get down.
we'll have a segment for. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Related
that was
to
a
the-
great idea.
Related to ours.
Good girl.
So.
All right. Sounds not gonna be here. But that's good. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So.
This is made me nervous, huh?
you're gonna be the moderator, right?
Okay.
Hey, brothers, come on, it is, shut the
Um,
fuck up, Friday.
I don't know where that came It's really long. I saw that video the other day. You guys know, I know. That's Colorado. Colorado. There's like, someone
That balloon.
I wrote down, but I didn't. Yeah.
Hello. Hey, Ken, what day did we set our class up for? February what? 11th or 4th? Anybody remember?
It sounds about like, we're all aligned.
We had a board meeting and some of us get forgetful.
It's either the phone or.
Well,
But it was.
I forgot because I'm gonna be in Hawaii then, so
Both of them?
what?
When are you gonna be in Hawaii? 4th or the 11th?
Well, I think it was the 4th.
Okay, that's gonna be my guess. That's gonna be my guess.
It was right at the beginning or end of the month.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna talk and, okay, it was gonna be you and Ken and our moderator. I'm gonna stall this one.
Do you need a video?
I don't think so.
Okay, you're good with just that.
Yeah, yeah, we can, yeah, because I don't think we have do you have a PowerPoint of any kind?
No, but we do have show and tell
Okay,
over there. on
well,
that side.
okay, we have show and tell, so we need, can you see us out there? Sue, can you tell us? Can you see us?
I have to turn it on, see how in the corner here, it says start video, I gotta turn it on.
I don't see anything except, yeah, now I do. Now
Hi.
I do. Hi, hi, everybody.
Okay, as down, yeah, you can wave to the crew.
Does that work?
We'll see how those kids do. Okay, I'm gonna stall till we get Tom P here.
By the way,
Oh, boy, I got 2 Queen stories that are pretty good too. Okay, let me make sure, okay, things coming up. Let's see, okay, and for those of you who might not know who I am, I go by TK, all right? Patty Crandall, I'm one of the ones who talk to a lot on there, and stuff. I am the treasurer, so I don't know if you ask for money from you for your dues, which go from January to December. Within that, I didn't see your son at in the 4-H. He didn't know.
Did a different project you can join.
Okay, that's okay.
What's that?
One of the girls, I sent her to state last year for what she did. She, on our Facebook page, you saw her, Chandra. I judged her and I sent her on to state and she got a state championship in Beekeepers. And I'll tell you what she did. Usually what they do is they Okay, part of 4-H, they give you, you bring in, the honey is one of them, and it's 3. Oh, you can do this for me, Steve McNair. You're gonna be my moderator as far as questions that come through. Can you do that? Oh, never mind. Okay, I'll get it figured out. I roll with the book. But anyhow, so last year what she did, she had 3 bottles of honey. And one of the things we kind of say, you know, on characteristics is, are they uniform and stuff like that? Hers, all 3 were very different. But it's the way she did it. She pulled them from 3 different hives with 3 different breeds of queens, a Russian, Carnolian, and an Italian. So each one had a distinct flavor. Each one was a different color, you know, and then instead of just putting the bottles out there, she made a nice table presentation. This year, she did the next step up, and again, that's one of the reasons I sent her to state was she had done bottled honey from one of the hives with one of the queens breeds. She did chunk honey from another hive with a different one, and then cut comb from the 3rd one, and again, made a nice presentation, and she got state championship. So again, she did that extra level, and it showed within that. Okay, some things coming up. A Labor Day weekend, that's Saturday, I believe it's the 3rd or 4th. September 3rd, we will be out at Sugar Grove Nature Center. What we will do is have it's our Hummingbird Festival, Hummingbird and Pollination Festival. So we'll have if you've ever been to Sugar Grove, raise your hand if you've been to Sugar Grove. Okay, there's something called the Sap and Honey House. And so during maple syrup time, they do sap in there, but then during other times we do our bee presentations in there. So we have all sorts of things, which is right next to one of the hives at Sugar Grove. I look for help, and what we do is we sell our club honey for one thing, but I have lots of educational material. I have blocks that they can see the bees. We have frames that shows pictures of the bees. We have touchy-feely things for kids and adults to look at and talk about bees. And people are very interested in bees. I find that they are interested and they are willing to listen and willing to learn. And so if you can, it's from like 10 to 2, if you, or 10 to 3, if you can give me a couple hours out there while we do it, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll do the setup, I'll do the tear down, and I'll have everything there. I just need some warm bodies to help talk to people about bees. All right, so that's one. We have in September 10th and 11th, I'll have a similar situation at ISU Horticultural Center. It's again, times I think are 9 to 2 on Saturday and 10 to 2 on Sunday. But it'll be a similar, I don't know if you've ever been out to the ISU Horticultural Center. It's across the street from the Corn Crib. It's on the south side of Rab Road. And again, they do, Jessica out there, Jessica Chambers does a great job with different types of themes. This one is textiles. So she will have, so there's various gardens with the, like flax, you know, making things that you make with textiles from plants. So she has a theme for it. So I asked her if she was gonna have hemp out there, and she said, she didn't think ISU would allow that. and the kids would probably partake in it, even though it doesn't have any potency to it. But so she has a variety of things you don't realize, you know, like cotton. She's got some cotton plants out there. So the theme this year is it has to do with textiles and things like that within it. So that's both Saturday and Sunday. Again, I'll have it all set up. I'm actually going to have a little bit of on native bees out there, because that's, again, people are getting, last year when we had it, we had our table and there was a hole next to our table, and it was actually a native bee house. So the native bees were coming and going and stuff like that. But again, it's helpful for, the Hummingbird Festival is usually 1,000 to 1,500 people. That can get busy. This one is, because it's over 2 days, it's a little bit more spread out. But again, I would take some help with that. And then back at Sugar Grove again in October is our autumn celebration. If you get my email, I then give me an email address and I send out just the different goings on, when we're going to have meetings, when we're going to do stuff like that. Okay, so I just saw Tom come here. Let's see, What else? We have our class scheduled, I believe, in the first, I think the 4th of February. I have to check for the date. So if you know somebody who's interested in beekeeping, we'll do that. We have a special Bees and Brews coming too, September 14th. It's a Wednesday. We'll be out at Sugar Grove. You see, we partner a lot with them. Nick from here is going to be teaching how to make mead. And then we'll have samplings of mead there. So we'll have a variety of mead. If you've made mead and want to bring a sample for us to partake in, say, okay, I made this, because mead has like a lot of variety. You've got dry, you got sweet, you got fruity, you got, you know, just all sorts of different flavors. We can partake in mead out there. We have a campfire, so we can do some s'mores out there also. So that's how we got. So that's what we've got going on. I can't remember what the topic for the next meeting was. It will be an email, so give me an email and I send it. I find some people like Facebook, some people like email, some people like person to person, some like website. I try to hit all of them. All right. Anything new and happening with you kids out there? I got 2 queen stories. You want them before or at the end?
Let's do the questions. So like, let's do the winter stuff for probably about an hour.
Okay,
Hour and 15. And
okay.
then we'll come around and we'll go around the room and see what everybody's doing and crazy stuff we've seen and done.
I got queens.
Is that cool?
Cool, absolutely. Okay, this is Tom Pantone. He's a consultant within it. James, raise your hand. James Shiverdecker, part of Team Shiverdecker, other Team Shiverdecker, Cynthia. Cynthia is our equipment manager. So if you want to borrow the extractor, if you want the silicat, James is getting the refractor. I remember to bring it. So we have a refractor, and what a refractor does, it measures the amount of moisture. And so we have this little thing. It's small, but it's mighty. It measures how much moisture is in your honey level, because you do need to have it, be aware of that within that. So let's see. So she's our equipment manager. James and Ken Sang, they are both board members. They are part of that team.
Yeah, I'm pretty bored.
Okay.
Does the refractor tell you what we're shooting for?
Oh, you're large.
Do you have that information?
Well, it just tells you what your moisture level is. You should be 17.
Okay.
Okay, that's in lots of books as far as your moisture level. But, so it tells you how much your moisture level is, and there's directions for it.
Hey, Matt.
And you can always bring it to, tell you what, James,
Yes.
next meeting, bring this with you and I'll put a little.
Actually, I thought somebody else was getting that. I wasn't asking for the refractor.
I have,
Was it Tom Kratz? Somebody.
no, he got the solar melter.
No.
Cynthia kind of has the stuff that is common, the extractor and extracting tape. I have the oddball stuff like the refractor and the solar melter and stuff. So that's part of the benefits of being a member. It's free for club use. Somebody asked me for this and they were, maybe it was Tom.
Yeah, they said they were gonna be here.
All right. I'm gonna turn the show over to you kids.
All right. So, hey, Matt, come on. Come on up here.
Oh, look at that. Look at
We
me.
want you to be on this too,
Corralling
'cause-
you.
Because you're running like 13, 14 highs, maybe 15 highs. So you'll be good insight.
How, I wonder.
What we're gonna talk about tonight is, we're gonna talk about winterizing. Sorry.
I may move you a little bit, so if
Well, how does it sound online? I figured like,
like
it should sound pretty good, right?
I was just gonna try and move it so they.
I
can see
think
it.
Patty's thinking, rather than see the audience go ooh and ah over what we do, that they see who's speaking.
Sorry.
I don't think it'll work that way. We tried this before and it didn't have cord.
Okay.
Hey, so tonight's topic is about winterizing and talking about what do we do to prepare for winterizing and all that stuff. And the one of the hard things to kind of wrap our heads around is it's I should have looked at a calendar, but I think we're about 8 weeks from frost right now. So like and that's sad. I don't know, in a way, I'm looking forward to it. Because deer season, all that stuff, but the, I don't want to say I'm done with these, but I'm kind of getting tired of it. So it's, you know, a lot of sweating and a lot of work and all that stuff. So it's, we really prep for, and we're gonna talk about this, but wintering starts in like June, end of June, early July for most of us. So learning that stuff, there's a lot of things that we do to prep here. And the folks that we have here, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna ask some questions and stuff like that, and maybe you guys can ask some questions too as we go through this. And we'll kind of hear some different perspectives, because I won't say between these three characters, they're wildly different, but they do things differently. So some may wrap, some may not wrap, some may wrap with different materials, some may insulate, some may put stuff over the top of them, some may have them in the middle of the field, some may have them next to their house. And a combination of all of the above, right? So I think it's really good to have that perspective from all these different people, and that way you're not just hearing what I do or something like that, because what I do is probably very different from that. So real quick, tell us, we'll start over with you, Team Sherwood. How many hives are you guys running? Where are they at? Are you run a combination in the country and you're at your house? So tell us a little bit.
I have two at our house. Last year I wintered two over at our house. And then I've got 10 in rural Leroy that's out in an open area. Some of them are right out in the open. One of them has a big hill on the north side of the hives. I've got 4 hives there. I've got 3 other hives that are in one area, and it's you would think this is crazy, but that hive has survived every year. There's 3 hives, and one of them is flipped around, and the entrance is facing north, and it survives.
So how many hives do you say you have in town?
2.
That's something unique. That's it.
Yeah.
think
Now
that's all you can
I mean,
have is-
I'm trying to be more legal.
I thought you had, oh, right. I forgot.
I mean,
So another unique thing about them, well, we didn't say what town you live in.
blooming.
So they, yeah, one of the unique things that James and Cynthia have is that his hives are on a roof. So they're on the roof of his garage, which is kind of cool.
Second floor deck.
It's very interesting. So like they have it's, I guess like a rubber roof. And I've been over there and worked these with them and looked at things and helped them out with stuff. And they showed me some things and all that stuff. So they have a killer garden, which you should probably be jealous of. But the interesting part about being on the roof is they're packed in with neighbors and stuff like that. And that kind of gives some different things that they have to prepare for. Mac, tell us about your stuff and the ranch. So
At Salem Ranch in Flanagan, I have 15 hives. And in rural Danvers, I have 7.
So in the 15 hives that he has at the ranch, for those of you that haven't been up to the ranch yet, you need to come visit. It's a pretty neat spot. It's a special place, but it's a really cool opportunity to go through bees and get to touch and see a lot of bees at once to go through. And he has an area that has like a backdrop, if you will. They did a really cool job painting. It looks really neat. Everything's really nice and well kept. And they has hives and stacks of 3. So he has 3 colonies, 3 colonies, 3 colonies. And then he's got some others kind of scattered around there. Some are science experiments of splits and things like that, and trying some different things. Max also participating. Tell us a little bit about the program you're doing now.
Our hives in Flanagan, we work with teenage young men who are struggling. And so it's a residential program. So the boys are there for 12 to 15 months. And it's not mandatory for them to work the bees, but generally they're intrigued and interested. Most of them gotten stung by a hornet or something at home. So they're like, but put them in a bee vest and gloves, and they get to open up a hive and get in there, and then they're hooked.
They're real excited about it.
Yes, they are. And I have a couple of young men up there now whose mom, both of them, their family had bees before, but the mom, the hive boxes got a little bit too heavy for her and stuff, so she kind of backed away. But both these young men are excited about maybe going home, and as are their parents, about rekindling beekeeping in their homes, or not in their house, but at home.
So one of the really cool things that Mac does, is the honey that they produce from the ranch goes to pay for their bee shenanigans at the ranch, and they use it to add on to auction items, or even as auction items on their own. And it's a really good teaching tool to give to people, or have people buy and learn about the bees and what the boys are doing and all that stuff, and just the opportunity to get you to interact with the boys. And then we've gone up and done some hands-on
Absolutely.
things where we've gone through hives and stuff like that. The boys have gotten involved, and it
Yeah.
actually, they've actually, I won't say big, but pretty darn close to, hey, can I get in there and do that with, or can I go do that with you? Like, they wanted to get back in, they didn't want to go back to the,
Right.
they didn't want to go back to the,
Next class.
yeah. And it wasn't just that they were avoiding school, because it was a free day.
Right.
When they had, they could have gone and done anything at that time. So it's really kind of a neat spot. So you're,
Well, and the other part is we typically get our bees from Tom, and
some of them,
we, the boys this year, after I showed them how to install a couple packages, they installed them themselves, and so it was pretty fun to watch them dive in.
yeah, they wanted to take over and put the bees in and let you supervise.
Yeah,
Which is
right.
cool, right? That's, and some of them, that was their first opportunity, their first shot at touching
Yep.
bees and
Yeah,
getting to play with them, which is really kind of a neat opportunity. So you have some personal bees as well
right,
that you run in Danvers. and-
yes. Yeah, out in rural Danvers.
So and those are out in the open, or they're in,
It's adjacent to a pollinator field and along the tree line. So fortunately, the west and the north, I have them with tree lines so that it cuts down on the wind
cool.
on them. We just had a kind of a fun thing this past week. Our teacher on the ranch, the boys go to school online there. Teacher on the ranch, their daughter called and said, "Mom, there's a bunch of bees in my tree out in front of my house." They live in rural Cornell. And so I said, "Well, take a picture, because sometimes people think they're honeybees, and well, these were definitely honeybees." And fortunately, they were in a small sort of tree shrub kind of place. So grabbed a couple of the boys and we went out and successfully captured the swarm. So that was another beekeeping experience for them to have, on
Okay, I guess real quick, everybody can hear us online, right?
Yeah, they're asking to try and see, and I don't know how to.
Well, there's nothing to see. So we're just kind of just sitting. Just like
When
we're
we
sitting.
get to show and tell, I was already
Yeah.
thinking we can take that.
We'll
page
roll that over
and
here.
pull it that way, and where we're seeing it, they should be able to see.
Yeah, it's real cool. Since it's on a rolling base, that should work out really good. So all right, so how about you, Ken?
Well, we have 18 hives right now. We're north of Carlock. Just walking distance to the river. So, either side of us, all around us, really, we have a lot of unmanaged sort of conservation type land. So we're looking at a tremendous goldenrod flow coming up in the next couple of weeks. I question whether I should be sitting up here this time, because out of the last 4 years, 3 of those years, we had better than 80% retention. Last year, because of COVID and some health issues and stuff like that, we didn't get out and treat when we wanted to, and we had 15% retention, so every mistake we can make based on what we like to do, we did.
You see, I think going forward though, what happened with you after having so much success that going forward says just how important winterization is.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
winterization is.
yeah,
That's the example that you give by that, and that was because of health issues, and so you didn't have a choice.
Was a
Right.
lot of issues.
yeah.
So the other interesting thing about Team Sing is, and it's not a very unique thing, believe it or not, but they have segregated hives. So he has his size hives and she has her hives. And I know a handful of people that buy bees from them, they have a similar situation. And there's a no touching policy with the other person's bees.
My,
So he has some unique perspective about that as well.
my wife got us started. I was still working. And best time to visit your bees is middle of the day, which was not possible for me to do while I was working at State Farm. So she did a lot of the bee work at first, and then I retired, and then I was just as hooked as Max boys. And I started, we both love to research the heck out of things, you know, we watch Cayman Reynolds.
That's an understatement.
We watched the Canadian Beekeeper, University of Guelph, Michael Palmer, is it?
Yeah, Michael Palmer, Michael Bush, gosh, was
Bob Benny.
I'm not so excited about Bush, but
Bob Benny.
yeah, Bob Benny. So my background was, I grew up on a farm. I'm a farm boy. My wife's background is she works or had worked in a medical lab. So she's sort of a clinical kind of person. I enjoy the science, but I also go from the animal husbandry that I've learned growing on a farm. So from that standpoint, we had our different ways of doing it, and one particularly hot summer. My wife was just totally fed up with the fact that I think we had 16 hives at the time. And she says, "This is nuts. All I want is 4 hives. I don't want any more." And I'm like, but I want to do things and try my own things. So we split the kids. She took her 4 hives. I said, pick which 4 you want. And I do my best to not do anything to her hives unless she asks me to. I also try to make sure I go out there when she's there, because like you said, the one boy's mother gave up beekeeping because the boxes were a little too heavy. So I try to be there and help her with her hives if she needs help with the boxes. But other than that, there's times when I want to say, you should be doing this. And I know she's the same way with me. So, but you know, we do diverge a little bit in our ways.
Oh, that's for real. So he'll we probably talked for a half hour after the board meeting the other night about the discrepancies between the 2 year management styles, and
Right.
you both have success and you both have failures. So
Right.
it's a very good perspective to share as well.
Yeah.
So that
She won't be proud to know that I'm revealing that of her 4 hives, none of them survived last winter. So she was not happy about that. We both felt pretty humbled by the whole experience. So even though you think you got things going, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, so and that's one of the big things that we want to share here. So before we go into our questions here, just raise a hands here. How many are first year beekeepers? Online too, raise your hands. So we got 2, 3 here that were first year. Two that are, and then online, how many first year beekeepers do we have on there? You could type in the chat. So then I assume everybody else is experienced, been doing this a while. How many are over 5 years? Okay. And how many of you are still learning and having a limited success over winter? Right, so. So for those of you that are online, there was a lot of hand raising there for all of us, right? So there's experienced people that have failures. I had a bunch of failures last year. Some mechanical issues and things like that. I have definitely had some height issues and some other things like that. So there's,
Get back. I keep losing you. You keep walking around.
well, I want that.
You're the one talking. They want whoever's talking.
All right, so well, you don't want to start. The what's interesting is hear the perspectives of what we did and what we didn't do to kind of learn from that and make some assumptions. So one of the things that we teach when we do the beekeeping class is that you need to learn from your experiences. So then one way to do that, and everybody's nodding their heads here, and then in the audience too, is one of the ways to do this. And I was just talking with my girlfriend Kathy about this the other day. It's very important to write this stuff down, to take notes, because you think you're going to remember, you're not going to remember, because you're going to sleep and you're going to have life and you're going to have all these. Oh, there's the team saying. So there's a lot of things that happen and you forget about what happened in that hive. Like I go through this all the time with Kathy. She has 2 hives at her house. There's a south one and a north one. And I'll go through her hive sometimes and she'll go through her hive. And I'm like, I don't remember if it was the north or the south or whatever. Well, the notes don't lie. So writing down that stuff is very important. And like at Sugar Grove, you guys write down inside of the lid, which I think
Last year I did.
is a neat idea. And that's really important at Sugar Grove because a lot of times we have different people helping out with it. So sometimes there might be some different things that happen. So writing things down is a great way to do it. Some of you have some different techniques. Team Sugar Beggars, you guys do a lot of pictures and video. I know well,
Not really.
you used to take a lot
I'm
of
not
pictures.
much for bookkeeping. I take pictures when there's problems or if I need to try to find out that what.
Tell a little bit about why, like how you look at them.
Okay, so basically, I'm considered legally blind. I see good enough. They let me drive during the day. So if you see me coming, be careful. No, so whenever we get into a hive, I can see large larvae. I've learned to see more. Over time, I do see more and recognize more, but sometimes things are small enough. And so what we'll do, especially whenever I was doing a lot of splits in the past, and you have new queens coming in, you got to find out if she's laying. I would take a picture of essentially one of the frames that I suspected that there was eggs, larvae on. And then I would be able to go back and I'd be able to look.
You blow it up on a big screen.
Yeah, or just even expand it up on the phone. You can expand it big enough on the phone, you can see it right there. You don't even have to go inside, you just do it on the phone. And it really does, it helps to confirm what you think you might be seeing. And it makes a lot of difference. Now, over time, Cynthia has gotten to where she recognizes eggs, and she's able to see the eggs and recognize what they are. And it's funny because there's a time last year where it just kind of clicked and she didn't. And so she sees that a lot. She's able to tell, a lot. The only thing that we really have difficulty in a lot of people have difficulty is finding that queen.
Yep.
When they're not marked.
Yep, and I've come out and worked bees with you and we've struggled with finding queens.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something that takes a lot of practice, and a little bit of luck, and actually a lot of luck and probably a little bit of practice.
Yeah, when you got 40,000 bees in a hive and you're looking for one.
It's tough. It's the worst game of Where's Waldo ever. And it's even worse without queen excluders and stuff like that. So Team Sing, I know in the past you guys have done some stuff. I know you take a lot of pictures and you write diligent notes.
Voice recording and then transcribe.
So she
It
runs,
takes a long time, but I don't remember squat. I can't remember what was in the last time I looked at.
oh, by the way, I'm your husband.
Actually, why don't you come up here so that we have the audio message. Because there's a lot of people online listening to, so then you can share it for you too.
So
She's the
anyway,
important
that's what
part, but she takes better notes.
So, and, I'm anal and OCD, our frames are all numbered, so I can tell you exactly what is in on what frame. But I can't remember, so when I have to pull some resources out of another one, I have to go back to my notes to look and see where I can pull from.
And that's why you take the notes.
I can't remember.
where I go with sort of a Cliff Notes version. She has a digital recorder that she starts the minute she opens the hive. And it's there, and then she goes back while she's watching TV that night and fills out her notes page. I have an Apple Watch that I use the voice recorder. I set that up on there, and I get through the whole hive. We run single beeps, so since we have single beeps, there's 10 hives. And I've got, you know, she's got 2 right now, I've got the other 16. If I had to do all those notes that she does, I not get any sleep.
And that's
I
okay.
And that's why I only have 2 hives, because when we were trying to do all of them together, both of us looking at every frame and then taking them.
So
I see, my approach to it is, I don't give any special attention to any hive unless there's trouble. When there's trouble, that's the ones I focus in on. And I'm more careful with, and you know, I know, okay, what I'm seeing in this hive isn't right. And I need to spend more time, I need to be going into more detail, that kind of thing. But if it's a healthy hive, I just go.
So a cool thing that Ken has done in the past too, is he wore a GoPro on a chesty mount. On there, and it recorded while he went through his hives, and then he's.
that was in the days when she wanted me to have, she's got a form that she fills out, and it has each hive frame number and that kind of thing.
And that's.
And when I would record using the digital recorder, she listened to my notes. And she goes, your notes don't make any sense. So I thought, okay, I will fix that, and I'll put the GoPro on my shoulder, and you know, then I can hold the frame up there and she can see. And first shot didn't work so good because there was nothing but buzzing. Second shot, I ran a microphone from the GoPro into my suit, and unfortunately the wire of the GoPro,
Found the hole.
they found the hole too. And we have a very humorous video that, you know, if you put it on this side, where they were going nuts that day. And so I had about 10 or 12 bees flying around inside here, and thousands of bees outside.
How many times you get stung inside of the wheel that day?
4 or 5.
4 or 5.
I resisted the
I
urge.
rarely get stung when they're coming down the hall.
I resisted the urge to pull the veil off because I knew there's more outside that, and you could smell that. It's like that banana Laffy Taffy smell when they're really irritated. If you smell that smell, you just say, okay, we're gonna have a timeout. I'm gonna go back to the beach house, get myself some water, let you guys calm down, and give them about 5-10 minutes before you go back out there.
Yep, and you,
And
it
we'll,
gives you a couple minutes to catch a cool and get back at it. So, Mac, how do you keep track of everything? I'm putting you on the spot, 'cause I kind of know some of them.
Well, I do write some on the lid of my hives with a permanent marker. And particularly when I'm treating, so I can write a date down. If I see queen cells or things like that, I'll write it on the top of the hive. And but I'd say, Tom, to be honest with you, that's an area that I think I could improve on, because there's a lot of moving parts. But I'm not making an excuse, but
I'll make excuses for it, because I mean, you're busy, you're doing,
yeah.
he's doing a lot of hives on his own, he's wrangling the boys at the same time, and doing a lot.
Does anybody use the brick method, you know, where you turn it in one direction?
I started that this year, and not turned, but what I got, it was horizontal, brick on top, high's good. One horizontal, one up, I'm not sure what's going on. Just one up, it's basically queenless and it's dying.
Yeah,
So I
I've
could-
done a similar thing.
Yeah.
So it was,
We mark, we'll put a brick on the ones that we're feeding, because you can't see the feeders inside the super. So do that so that we know which ones have got.
My process as far as my Apple Watch is, I'll keep it to 30 seconds to a minute. And I'll say, how many frames of bees that I saw, teams of bees? How many frames have brood on them? Did I see the queen or did I see eggs? And you know, any exception notes like James would do. And so then before I go out to my bees the next time, I go through and I listen to each one and it says, was it my 15? And, you know, I did this and, you know, I need to look at this.
So I would argue that taking notes is probably one of the most important, or some way to remember what's going on inside your hives is one of the most important parts of beekeeping. And I mean, it can be debated because there's a lot of most important parts about beekeeping. But that's probably I think one of the number one things, because you'll never remember what happened to be able to say, what did I do to fix it? And did it work, right? Because every time you work on your bees, it's a science experiment. So go back to school, right? You made a hypothesis, and then you tested your hypothesis, and then you wrote down notes, right? So you said, here's my theory of what's going to happen, and then I went and did something, and then what was the result? So keeping those notes is really the only way you can keep track of this. And when you have failures, you go back and look at the notes. When you have success, you go back and look at the notes, right? Because you want to not have the failures and you want to have the success. So without those notes, when somebody asks you, what did you do? When did you do your treatments? What kind of treatments did you do? Or something like that. You can say, well, I know I did OA sometime early August or something like that, or I did this or I did that. But I don't remember exactly on this hive what my mic counts were beforehand, unless you wrote it down. There's no way you're going to remember that. So notes are really, 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 really important, and it'll make you a better beekeeper. I promise you. It doesn't have to be fancy. Don't be overwhelmed when you hear an Apple Watch or doing those kinds of things. It's what works for you is what's important. And if it's a Sharpie on the lid, that's great. If it's a detailed worksheet for your hive, that's great. If you want to use an app, fantastic. Whatever you want to use so that you can remember what was going on in there, what you did, and what the results were, that's what you need to keep up. And experiment, because you might say, this is way too much work to keep the worksheet, or maybe I need to go to the worksheet because I need to make some improvements. So definitely experiment with that.
I think the worksheet even helped me at first. So it gave me an idea of what trends I wanted to look at.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there. I know Data used to put one inside of their catalog that was on there. And there was a notebook that they sell and stuff like that. But there's all different kinds of worksheets out there. You can use the Googles, look it up. There's a lot of different ones, a lot of different ideas. Post on the Facebook page on our forum. It'll be interesting to hear what other people have. You know, maybe Sharon can post a picture of hers. And you can kind of see what hers looks like or something like that. That's a great way to learn from other people. And what I always say to people is learn from my mistakes. So learn from my failures. So that you don't make the same failures. All right, so let's talk about some things. So do you guys run single deeps or double deeps?
Doubles.
So double deeps.
Single.
You run everything. Yeah,
Singles.
singles, both these singles.
Yeah.
So what that means is there's some differences and some similarities. And what that means is you know, deep meaning a high body, right? A lot of times it's confusing with beekeeping because we use a lot of words for the same thing. So we'll say a box, we'll say a super, we'll say a deep, we'll say a brood chamber, all these different words, and it could mean the same thing. But bottom line, I tell you a little secret, bees don't care what you call them. So they need space. So what it means when you run a single deep is you have to manage your hives a lot more aggressively. And that's for the good or bad. And there's some reasons why you want to do it, and there's some reasons why you may not want to do it. That's a whole nother topic for another day. You may not have to do it wintering. But what is important about wintering is that you run a single deep is what your resources look like going into winter. So I mentioned earlier before you walked in, we prepare for winter in July. Which is hard to believe, right? You're sweating, and you're like, oh my God, even today.
You're
I was
almost
pulling
always
through.
working 6 months ahead.
Yep.
You're
Like,
looking 6 months.
You're
forward.
always planning ahead because it's math, and I suck at math, but it's always math. You always want to say, how many bees do I need for the job ahead, right? So when is my clover, if clover is my number one harvest, I want to be prepared with my bees so that they're strong and really, really hard when that comes into bloom. So, all those things, same thing going in the winter, right? If I need to put up a bunch of food into that hive, I need a bunch of hands to be able to carry it, right? So there's, the numbers are very important there. So, that's something to take into account when we say single deep or double deep or mediums or deeps. So I think all you guys run deeps, right? Right. Okay. So that's a good note there. So for preparation for winter, we start in July. What are some of the things that you're doing in July to prepare? Start on.
I'm treating for mines. What I do typically in July, this year, third week in July, I pulled all my honey supers off. And what they have in the brood chambers is there. The next week, I started treating with Apigard. And I did a 3 treatment method where you're doing 30 grams 3 weeks in a row. And then I've started feeding. And get a feed through the dirt. 1-to-1 syrup, sometimes a little thinner than 1-to-1 syrup.
So a couple things you said here for the new people. Dearth means there's no food coming in.
No
And
pollen.
remember, the bees need 2 forms of food. They need, just like us, we need protein and we need carbohydrates. The protein is pollen and the carbohydrates is nectar that turns into honey, right? So that's why you're preparing, or assume you're feeding.
So
you
what?
want to build that high.
Yes, I want, because it is natural for those bees, whenever that dearth happens, they, especially, I lean more carniolan and, Italians, they'll keep laying, they'll keep the pedal to the metal and keep on going. Carniolans will pull back. And essentially you'll have a big drop in bees, through that period of time. And I want to keep those numbers up as much as I can. I don't try, like this year, I haven't been feeding any pollen because I have so much pollen coming in the area where I'm at. They plug out the hives with pollen. And so I'm hoping through August, they'll consume some of that pollen and make more room in those brood chambers by using some of that pollen.
Which that's a common trait of carniolans.
Yeah.
So when we say carniolans, Italians is the race of bees. Carniolans a lot of times will pack in a lot of pollen, whether they need it or not. I see that. That's what we like to breed. Is a lot of carniolans, but we also breed Italians as well. But you'll definitely see a difference from that. So the hot, we're gonna come back to feeding in 1 second. But so that's what you're doing to prep in July. So what key things I heard is you're managing your mites. You're trying to get a good knockdown. So you're pulling your honey. You're treating hard for mites. And you're feeding to be able to make a big, strong colony.
Yeah, to
That's
keep
what I
them
heard.
going through the dirt and into fall.
Yep. So Mac, how about you? What do you start doing in July? Anything?
Well,
You're raising honey.
actually, I try to be intentional earlier, like March and April by trying to plant forage that will bloom at certain times.
I was hoping you were gonna say that because you have a unique, we all have unique honey flows, right? So
Right. And so I mean, when you have that many hives, it's a lot of
I'm not-
forage to have. But,
So the ranch is in the middle of conventional ag, monoculture.
yeah,
So there's
row
not
crop.
really a lot of food, there's not a lot of hedgerows, those kinds of things. So you have to make that habitat.
right,
for your
right.
girls.
right. And then, like even, we just, the last week or so planted some buckwheat. So, to try to be intentional as best I can, and I'm learning to provide forage that blooms, like, is it sedum now that's starting to
Yeah.
bloom?
See them.
And so, if we can be intentional about what we plant or make available to our bees throughout that time, doesn't mean that we don't do things like Jim is talking about, absolutely. But that's just another way to help them. And then goldenrod at our hives in Danvers is starting to come out. So as best we can, be intentional about, at least that's what I'm trying to do up at the ranch, providing forage into the fall.
Yeah,
But
so that's
I
one
would-
of the things for the ranch, is your big honey flow is now.
Right,
Your honey flow is typically when ours is shut off. Yours is coming on in end of June, into July, and even into August and September as well. 'Cause
Right.
You have sunflowers planted,
Yep.
you have clover, you have
Right.
buckwheat starting, so your buckwheat that you just sowed, it's gonna be blooming in 4 weeks, 5
Right.
weeks. So you look at buckwheat in Germany, it's awesome. So I mean, it needs warm soil, it needs a little bit of moisture, but after that, it's good to go.
right,
So you guys are making that habitat, but your major honey flows right now, so your supers are on.
right.
I did see you pulled some honey out.
Yeah,
but
we cut
you probably
about
got
a week
deer.
or so ago. And so, yeah, and so we've got a pretty good harvest just recently, and so that allows me to be able to leave more resources on the hives going into the winter. I may cut again a little bit, but I just have to go and see how heavy the hives are, open them up, and see what kind of resources they have. If I don't, if it seems a little sketchy or a little low, I'll do like Jim does, I'll feed them sugar water and kind of go from there.
And some of the reasons too, why he may pull some of that honey, but a lot of that honey he may leave for the bees is
Yeah.
because it's gonna be sunflowers, buckwheat, some of those that to some people isn't desirable. I kind of like some of it, but
Yeah.
the average person wants pretty light clover, honey, that kind of thing. So
Actually, we debate that a little bit with you.
agreed.
No,
I built a market,
goldenrod.
I built a market for it as well.
We, when we started selling at vendor markets, we did what we called a taste test challenge because we do get a significant flow of goldenrod. And so our spring, summer honey, I call it the Heinz 57 varieties of honey because it's thing from dandelions to black locust to honey locust to, the alfalfa clovers. And it sort of finishes up with, we have basswood tree, and that's just amazing when the bees are hitting the basswood. But that it's impossible to get a monofloral honey from them. But then when the fall comes, you can smell the dirty socks in the apiary, but you also have a darker honey that you pull off. And we did a challenge and we had about 60% of the people that tasted the honey. We'll put a little drop on a wooden ice cream spoon and give them the summer honey first and then the fall. 60% preferred out of about 200 samples. So, yeah, fall. Well, they prefer. it. But no, it's, and it's typically the little kids and like, you're gonna say, oh, you're a little kid, you're gonna like the summer honey. But a lot of the adults like the more robust, complex taste of the fall honey.
Yeah.
Now, we don't get as much fall honey, so we want to sell that summer honey like. the most
Absolutely, or maybe blended even.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to go back to Mac, for his thing, we did a workshop out at his place. And that was about the end of June. And one of the things we talk a little bit, what were we looking for inside of the hives and what did we do with that workshop?
Well, I mean, we're looking for brood, we're looking for the queen, we're looking for whether they're ready to split. We had one hive where Tom ended up requeening it because the queen was in there, but she wasn't producing. And so it was early enough that we could change her out and put a new queen in there, and I think it fixed the issue.
So we balanced out your hives as
Yeah,
well. So we
right.
went through and we said, here's some that are weak and here's some that are boiling over
Right.
that are gonna be swarmy. So we kind of leveled all that out.
Moving frames around.
That was kind of the big thing that we did there
Right.
with Kerm. And then at that time, he actually stacked some supers on them too,
Mhm.
which is probably a big saving thing for him. Because they would have been in a tree probably a week or two later, because most of them were boiling with brood,
Mhm.
a lot of brood ready to go.
Right.
So that was something we did there. So a key takeaway there is that he was making sure that his queens were laying good. Because if his queens aren't laying good, he's not gonna have his numbers to go into winter strong. But more importantly, he's also not gonna have his numbers to be able to harvest his big flows of honey, right, which was coming out right about then. So he's making his choices then to balance his queens out. He's leveling everybody out so that he doesn't have robbing going on in his weak hive versus a strong hive, so everybody was level. And what that means was we took some brood from the strong ones and put it in the weak ones. And made sure everybody was similar, about 7-8 frames of brood in a box. And they were all in really good shape at that time.
Probably why you run some Italians, even though you like the Carmens. Since the Italians are pedal to the metal making brood,
A little bit of both. Yeah, my
You've got-
carnies pretty.
you got the Italians to pull from in the weaker flow kinds to pull brood to give to some of the Carmens that maybe.
Can you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we did when you were there, actually. So we were actually
I
taking,
saw that, but I didn't know that's what you were doing.
that's what we were doing. So that's, well, when you watch commercial beekeepers or you watch guys on YouTube, that's what they're doing. Sometimes they explain it, sometimes they don't. So they're taking the frames of brood and making sure the queen's not on there. So what I usually do, we did when we went through the hives, we put eyes on her, the highness, and we put her in a box. And then we went and took the frames that we wanted to separate and move them between. So we had some that were open and moving frames, and we equal it all out. And what you have to do is remember your math, right? So if you want a long fuse on the bomb, you give them eggs or you give them larvae versus half brood. If you need a quick pick me up that week or next week, you're gonna put a nice dark chocolatey frame of brood in there. You know,
I'd say
that's
what,
gonna merge
2,000 in a frame,
9,000.
9,000.
About ballpark. I mean, you got the honey cap and all that stuff, so who knows, but there's like 9,000 cells on a deep. So that's gonna get the party started, right? So two deep frames is like the same as a package. So you're gonna be in really good shape when you put that in a hive. And I think the one that was weak that we put the queen in, I think we threw 3 frames of brood in there
Mhm.
to balance it out, because she was definitely failing, needed to be replaced a while ago. So we she had a lot of popcorn brood. I think was laying some drones in there, so I think we scraped some of the drone brood,
Right.
and then we put in a bunch of frames of cat brood from ones that were definitely gonna be in a tree. They were ready to go for a ride in the tree. That next week for sure, they're gonna swarm, so,
So why did you choose that option over combining them with somebody else?
cause, he needs honey to pay for his program.
Okay, so he needed the eye.
Yeah, so he's got the hardware, we're gonna use it, so. And we talked about it. We said, what do you want to do next? Do you want to
Right.
combine them? Do you want to clean them up? And the other reason why we did it is I had a queen. So
Right,
I had a
right.
queen ready. If we wouldn't have had a queen, we would have done exactly that. We would have combined. We're gonna talk about that in a minute, because right now is when you should be combining. And this is not the time to be making your splits and some of that stuff. You can, there's some family stuff, but for the most part, right now, you should be combining your weak stuff with strong stuff. Take your losses now and put them strong in the winter. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that we did there. Is we want to make sure that we got strong, healthy, well-fed bees in July, actually all of them. How about you guys? What do you're anything different you're doing in July? I know it just spoiler.
We started feeding our bees, especially those bees that
All
were
right,
not the
split.
production. The splits that hadn't quite gotten to a full box of bees. And so we were feeding those. We also took one of her hives and gave it another bee. And then we checkerboarded in foundation. And you said,
That time, because they were drawing comb, great.
so, yeah,
Yeah, so for you guys, since you had
Thinner than 1-to-1.
a little bit thinner, you guys
We
love
go-
that drawing.
we go 13 pounds of water and 10 pounds of sugar.
Yeah, so the one of the things that you guys were doing because of the losses you're trying to build right? So you're trying to make some splits. You're trying to get back to a good number of hives, and you want to put in the winter because you want to be sustainable. So if you have some losses from the winter, you can overcome your own by bees and breeder.
Something that was pointed out to me that was kind of an aha moment. It's, we talk about treating so that we have healthy bees going into winter. But if you have bees with hygienic behavior, which most of them have some, they are working against you because they're taking out all of those bees that have mites.
So tell a little bit
So
about
you're
what
losing, you're not only losing, or having unhealthy bees, you're losing numbers because they're pulling out the ones.
So explain a little bit what that means.
Okay, well, the hygienic behavior is, where the bees can sense that there are mites under the cap.
Something wrong.
Yeah, something wrong with it. So they'll uncap it and they may or may not pull out the pupa. Sometimes they do, sometimes they just leave it and it'll die. But yeah, that's their way of managing the problem. So.
I saw a lot of my packages this year. And I've heard from a lot of customers that bought packages, saw a lot of hygienic behavior, which was pretty neat to see. Now, you can also have a bad side of that, like you could have, like, the stock that we breed from is highly hygienic. Like we breed for 75 to 100% in the breeder queens. So they're constantly ripping, they'll rip out good larvae and throw them out just because they're edgy, they're nervous, right? They're going through and doing that, because keep in mind, when we graft and you buy from me, is only going to have a portion of that. So you lose some of that with each generation. So that's something that happens. All right, so now as we go into August, I think one thing that we talked about here that you heard from everybody is nutrition. You heard feeding, planting, you heard all that stuff. Nutrition is very important, as we learned last month when we talked about mite treatments. Is, Dr. Samuel Ramsey turned the world on its ear, 6 years ago, and said that mites don't drink the blood of the bee, they eat the fat body of the bee. And that's really important going into winter, because like Randy Oliver has a great paper, if you really want to nerd out, I think it's like 40 something pages, and it's called Fat Bees. And what it talks about is nutrition, about how bees make fat and maintain fat through the year, and how he supplements that as a commercial and non-commercial beekeeper, so that people can learn from about like what pollen substitute does, how failures with pollen substitute, all that stuff, and feeding, and a lot of tips and tricks in there. But the key takeaway there is if we have high mite loads, I know you hear us over and over and over talking about mites. There's a reason why, because if you have high mite loads, you're raising weak, skinny bees. So in this world, we want fat bees. We want them strong, because that fat body does more than just get through winter. That fat body is also their detox mechanism. And we live in the land of corn and beans with lots of spring. Sorry.
I was just gonna hit that the fat body is equivalent of the human liver.
Right.
And it filters, and whenever that mite injects in there and starts feeding off that fat body, and if it's got the, what is it? The bugs that they have. It's terrible. Viruses, thank you. Good Lord. If they've got the viruses, which all of them do, they're literally injecting those viruses directly into the bee's equivalent of their liver.
So not only are
And
they
so
down there,
it's not if they're going to get the viruses, they've got them immediately when they do that.
yeah, so there's a lot going on there. While we want to manage those mites throughout the season. We're not just managing them in July. We're managing them after we put our packages in, or we're managing our overwintered hives early, before they start building up for the year. There's a lot of things going on there, and we talked in depth about that last month, but
Best practice is get them low and keep them low.
exactly.
Don't let them ramp up. Keep
So, but
them
when we're talking about wintering, we want that mite load low, because we want less bad things going into winter. So we want less bacteria, viruses, all that stuff that the bees might be carrying, because that's going to make them weak. And if you're weak, you're going to have a hard time making it. Winter sucks, right? It sucks for us, let alone imagine if you only weigh a couple grams, right? So they have a whole different deal.
It's this generation of bees that are gonna be, begin to make fall bees. You want the generation of bees in August, you want them clean of mites, you want them clean of the viruses, because if those bees are feeding larvae and they're sick, they're gonna be feeding sick food to the
That's
larvae.
exactly where I was going.
And so you want clean bees now, so they're
Clean bees last
making
month.
clean larvae and clean bees for your winter bees.
Yeah.
And so they're healthy. I'm sorry. but
If you
I
want to
stole your
clean in
thunder.
July, well, that's what we're gonna talk about, is that's our job in August, is so that the bees can build, and if they don't have a nectar flow, you gotta give them a nectar flow for them.
Another thing that we saw last year is our mic, we do mic counts once a month on the first of the month, so we don't forget. So,
Sometimes it's very.
our mic counts were great all through the year. Even September, I think, was good. And October 1st, bam, 17, 20 mics for high. So,
It's too late.
so, yeah. too late. So I guess we should have done a proactive.
But your August was clean.
Yeah.
Then you probably got a mic bomb from somebody
Could
else.
be, I don't know, or just our numbers dwindled enough that the mic counts. went
Well, by the
crazy.
same token, we were doing mic counts last week? And we saw, 3 hives. One had 4 mites, one had 8 mites, and the other one had 7 mites. And we made the decision that we're putting Formic on all 18 hives. So they're now closed up with Formic Pro and
So why did you make that decision? So we're gonna make sure everybody understands that.
well,
So you said you were
They say
over the
that-
threshold.
yeah, for 300 bees. If you have 9 mites, that's sort of the accepted threshold. And because of what we saw last year, we're not taking any chances.
And because they can't infect another hive. So that's why we're
So-
treating all of them at once. Because we don't want, Joe Blow over here taking his mindset.
Cause you guys have a bunch of hives, but then you also probably have a bunch of hives in the timber around you and other things like that, maybe some neighbors and stuff like that. There's other bees in the area that could be passing.
So what happens whenever I said mic bomb is if you've got another beekeeper within flying distance of you that's not been responsible. Or they're a natural beekeeper and they think it's up to nature, or you've got feral hives. And as the mites go higher and higher and higher in a hive, they have a natural response. For the bees, as they get sick, they will fly out of the hive. And so in the fall, they'll say, my hive absconded. The chances are your hive didn't abscond, they all started flying out because they were all sick. And then it comes to a point where they do leave, the rest of them will leave, and they'll fly into your hives. And so then you've got a mite bomb because all of those bees are going to be laden with mites. Potentially multiple mites on some of the bees. And so you're gonna go from a 1 or a 2 mite count to what you guys, there's a good chance that's what happened to you is you got hit a bomb.
Okay, so we beat you over the head with manager mites, even if you don't want to manage your mites. So we know that because we want to have our virus load low. And we want to make sure that we have strong, healthy bees to make winter bees. And we also want to make sure we have fat bees going in the winter so that they can maintain themselves through the cold, maybe months without being able to leave the hive and do things, right? So we want to make sure that we have good, strong, healthy fat bees going in the winter. So we all agree on that. So now we start talking about, as we go into September here, I believe next week, is what do we got? Now it's go time, right? So what are some of the things that you guys are going to be doing starting now? I would say like end of August, beginning of September. Let's talk about that.
For me, it's just feed. By September 15th, I'm probably gonna be starting to put the winterization on the hive. From one step to the next, I guess I kind of look at the weather, the colder it's getting, I'll get, inference reducers on. I will, the tall hive over there is the one that I brought. That's what I'm going to be doing this year. Last year I did something a little different. Some of them I did this way, some of them I actually, had the black thing on there, which is a, if you want to take it off, Tom, it's, that is an insulation wrap. Some of them I had last year, the top chamber, I had foam brood chambers on the top. And then I left the bottom just as wood. And typically by January, they brought, go up in that upper chamber and they were just fine. So I've got the bottom chamber, is gonna pretty much house the bees. The top chamber, I want that thing getting full of sugar. Essentially for me, it's sugar water. I have a different approach. I try to feed my bees as much sugar water in the fall as I can because there's no indigestibles in sucrose syrup.
What does that mean?
The indigestibles here, it can be a problem. Up in Canada, it's a real problem, where the type of honey that they have in the fall has a lot of indigestibles in it. It's just like kind of like roughage in our food. What's that do to you? Whenever you got to go to the bathroom more, and that those indigestibles makes it where the bee has to go potty more.
So goldenrod is one of those, asters is one of those, and there's some other stuff as well that doesn't.
And so if you have a cold winter, a real cold winter where they're not getting out and they're not able to expel typically, you can have more dysentery happen in hives, that type of things. And there's actually a study that was done that was showing that sugar syrup is actually more stimulative to the bees, and it is better for the bees overall. That's what they do in Canada, is they pull all the honey off in the fall and they start feeding sugar water. And that's what they overwinter the bees on, in sugar water, because they end up having to put their bees in a shed for 6 or 7 months. And so those bees can't expel for 6 or 7 months. And with that sugar water, it's clean enough that they're able to survive.
And building on that, I told you last year was our worst winter in 4 years. And what we did was, we had a tremendous goldenrod flow, but we also had a lot of frames that were just nectar, but not kept. And so I left those on a number of the hives, like if I pulled 6 from this hive and 5 from this hive, they'd lose their super, but this hive would still have a super with all those nectar filled frames. And most of our losses were on those hives that had overwintered supers.
So don't do that.
And that's goldenrod, so that's a lot of indigestibles.
So are you doing 1-to-1? feeding or the
Well,
less than one?
in September, I'm starting to ramp up, at least by the middle of September, I'm gonna start feeding 2-to-1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, right now, whenever I feed, I took 2 buckets out, out to 10 hives, I took 2 buckets out. And about what you guys, 1.3-to-1, where you're using more water than you are sugar. 1.3-to-1 is highly stimulative to bees. And that's one of the reasons why you guys are making a lot of wax
Oh, yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Is because of that 1.3-to-1, that is most stimulating to the bees. And so right now, I might feed 1.3-to-1 one more time. And then I'll go to 1-to-1 for a couple weeks in September, but then I'll start hitting them with 2 of them.
So what's that recipe?
Depending on what I see in the hive. The more honey I see in the hives and more sugar water I see in the hives, it's kind of a dynamic thing, but whenever the end of the season comes, I want
We're gonna
that
talk
top
about
chain.
that
Okay, sorry.
So what's the recipe again look like for your light syrup that you're using for stimulation?
1.3 water to 1 sugar. by weight or estimate, you don't have to have it, you know, it's not rocket science.
So you guys are 13 pounds of water to 10 pounds of sugar. Is
Yeah.
a good way to look at it.
About,
We
so it's
gotta-
about right.
Sugar and water weighs and volume is the same. So if you have a bucket of water and a bucket of sugar, or you have a quart jar of water and a quart jar of sugar, either way works. And the bees don't sit and taste and go, hey, you're going light. Come on, you know, do a little better.
And they're in the mood to rob if they can. That's
Oh, yeah.
why I got a funny little thing here. This is,
Be healthy here.
don't,
Oh,
not now,
not this time.
Okay, thank you.
because that attracts them.
The honeybee healthy has, a lemongrass oil in it. And that mimics the queen's pheromone and it drives them nuts. And they will smell that from even inside the hive and like you said, the robbing will go crazy.
Yeah.
It'll take the robbing and it'll explode.
This is called the robbing screen here. And it's basically an entrance reducer, but it also sort of hides where the bees come in. There's this little hole right here that they come in and out. And it lets the bees, you know, especially if it's a weaker hive, defend, you know, their hive from, you know, robber bees. And, you know, it at least helps.
So when we're talking about feeding, and we're talking about when to stimulate them versus when to fill the pantry. How do you know to feed your bees? Let's talk about that. I want to hear all your perspectives on this. So start with you.
I start feeding my bees whenever the dearth is starting to happen, and I start seeing, robbing, happen. Like this year, whenever I pulled all my supers off, it was really strange because typically by the third week in July, I'm starting to see all the bees congregate at the back of my truck. And you know, when you see that congregating happening and they're starting to try to rob the honey back out of the chambers on the back of the truck, you know that the flow is over. But it seemed to happen late for me this year. And so as soon as I start seeing that kind of behavior, or if I'm getting into a hive and you start seeing bees accumulate and you go, okay, you gotta be careful because robbing can start. That's
And you
when I
gotta
start,
make
that's
your
when I start to
inspections
feed.
fast.
Yeah, you gotta make your inspections fast, in and out, absolutely. And you gotta be real careful. That's when I start feeding, the 1.3 to 1. And I feed them through that girth and into the end of the year. Ken and his wife, they have a very unique situation because I do not get that goldenrod like they do, and they get a harvest every year of it. And where we are, we don't get enough of it to make the difference like that. Where, you know, theoretically, you
So
wouldn't
we
have
don't
to feed
start
your
feeding
bees.
till we pull the goldenrod.
Yeah,
Well,
oh, that's
feed-
right. That would
We
be unique for
at the
you.
end of July, and we're feeding now.
No, we just stopped.
Feeding
Oh, we just finished.
When we
just stopped.
When
Oh,
we
that's
put
right,
the
Sunday.
formic on, I
Okay.
said, I'm not gonna feed them anymore.
So, yeah, and then supers are going on.
There should be enough that they've got something to pull from if they're not.
So
But-
Matt, how do you know, like, what are the signs you're looking for? When to feed and when not to feed, or when to stop, when to slow down, when to give them more feed and switch around?
Well, one indicator I look for too is the larva and eggs, if there is any, if it's dry inside versus having some royal jelly or whatever in the bottom, the white.
Yeah.
When it's dry, there's a dearth, or they need to be fed. And so I've never heard about this 1.3 to 1. I've only done 1 to 1 or 2 to 1.
It was,
And so, when I go into the fall, I'll take the queen excluder off and I'll start feeding them 2 to 1. So maybe that's too much too soon, but
there was a video that I shared on Facebook in the Central Illinois Beekeepers group where Bob Binney did his talk on, and he talked about the solids and, you know, the tendency to produce. It's a excellent presentation has a lot of references to scientific studies, and
The other
one of
thing,
the things was one of those studies where he's found 1.3 to 1.
well, another thing that I do not at this time, but further in the fall, start feed them honey or sugar blocks too.
Oh,
And that helps in that you're not introducing liquid necessarily into the hive as it gets cold. But that's something that I start to do as well. And I put a spacer above the super so that I can easily go in there. This is when it gets colder. Go in there and put sugar in the top as well, and kind of gives you a little bit of a pulse too of how the hive's doing. And one of the ways that I do it too is because of the condensation that'll eventually begin to accumulate inside is I'll take old egg crates and put the sugar in that. And what I find is that egg crate acts as a wick to a certain extent as well. I mean, there are other ways to wick that stuff off, I know, but that's one way.
Are you talking about the ones that are not styrofoam?
No,
Right.
We like to use these to mold our sugar blocks. So we just wet the sugar a little bit, tamp it down, and let it dry. Yeah, yeah, I mean,
I'm up on our new department of things, but I think that's-
yeah, I asked them if I could get some, and they gave me 15 of those, so.
These are real easy to slide in the winter. We've tried the mountain camp where you pour sugar on, and that's great when you start out, but like you have to refill it. Opening it up to pour sugar in is when there's bees up there, you know, and it's cold, it's not easy.
We
So
do
it's
what
not
we
so
can,
easy
but-
to just crack it and slide right in.
The other thing we did as far as sugar or moisture is hold up do you recognize which ones are, we build these boxes here. They have the screen on the bottom, and then we fill it up with wood chips. And that lets the moisture wick up into there.
So anything else that you guys are looking for feeding? Like science to feed, like, I think the number one rule throughout the whole season of when you need to feed and when not to feed are the larvae dry. So larvae are gonna be your worms, right? So eggs are gonna just be a speck. Once they turn into a little worm, either a skinny worm or a fat worm, they should be wet. They should have that royal jelly in there. And if they don't have the royal jelly, they're starving. So you gotta give them feed if they don't have feed. That's definitely a good rule of thumb. Now, I think one of the things that you guys probably have learned and I think you were getting at it, James, is like a little bit of it is your spidey sense. Because you've been through it a couple of years and you know what your place is. Now, I seem to always be surprised every year because they don't always follow the rules and they're not consistent with all this, and maybe the plants are just, I don't know what the deal is, but.
yeah, it's
I
usually
got
the
wildly-
same, but the timing always fluctuates.
right.
Because of weather, and other conditions. You've got a week or two, maybe, usually a week or two, it can fluctuate.
It depends, right? So you're looking for those signs, and that's why going and doing regular inspections is so important. If you're not looking in your hives every other week, you're not gonna know that they're starting. You can't take action. Next thing you know, you got a dead hive, or you have serious problems, or you have a bad queen and the hive has gone to pot, and it's a bad deal. So that's what you're looking for when you're doing those regular inspections, is to say, do I have a problem? Do I need to take action? Do I need to feed them? Do I need to rob from a rich one and get to the poor? That kind of thing. I always say over and over and over and over, you should always be balancing your hives. And I cringe every time I hear somebody say I got a weak hive and I got a strong hive, because they'll rob the shit out of the weak one. They'll hammer them every single time and they'll kill them. And the same thing with pests. Just no good ever comes from a weak hive. So stop it. So always either give resources from a strong hive or combine it with your strong hive and call it quits and make a split later on. You gotta keep them balanced out, otherwise they're either gonna get taken over by, especially this time of year, taken over by hive beetles, wax moths, they're gonna get robbed by wasps. There's so many things that are going on right now. The praying mantises are it looks like Shark Week at my house right now. Every single hive has praying mantises on it. My nukes all have praying mantises. They're snatching bees out. Everything's trying to eat my bees right now. So if you have a weak hive, they can't overcome them. So definitely always be balancing out your hives. And if you need a hand, make some friends here. Shake a hand and say, will you be my bee buddy? Can I come over and play with your bees? And you come over and play with my bees. We'll learn from each other. That's really important. So definitely make some friends here. That's why we come together in this meeting, is to learn from each other and learn from successes and failures about that. So you want to start combining things now. So if you have a weak hive, you have a bad queen, you need to be taking action right now. Actually, you probably should have been taking action already, but right now it's game time, because this is the bees that are making your winter bees. So if you don't have a strong queen to lay up and make lots of brood and have lots of workers, you're done. That hive is not going to make it. So and it's a tough decision, because I hate squishing queens and I do it all the time. And I've never gotten over it. It really bothers me to squish a queen. I always want to give them another shot and give them another chance, and they usually always fail me. But now is your time to make those combines and put your weak ones together and make strong hives right now, because they need to be making good, strong bees going in the winter. And they need to be having lots of workers to be able to pick up the feed that you guys are feeding. So if you don't have a lot of bees in there, they're never going to be able to fill that comb and make this full of feed. This is like 90-something pounds of feed that's going to be in here. And if you can only carry, I don't know, 10, 15 grams, that's a lot of trips, right, to bring that in. So you got to have a lot of workers to do that. You got to make sure right now, if you don't have drawn comb, you're in trouble, right? So that's why you guys are using that lighter, thinner syrup to cause them to draw a comb out that they have. You've been moving your frames through the season to make sure that they're drawing out comb like that were on the outside, or ones that they wouldn't touch. A lot of times I just say, oh, then I'll pull one out that they just haven't done anything with, and I'll put another frame in. Sometimes they just don't like it. You got to make sure they're drawing comb while there's a honey flow, or that you're doing a stimulating feed like that for them to draw, because starting pretty quick here, they're not going to draw any. They're not going to make it.
The
So
reason we're doing that too is because we have a lot of frames that need to be replaced. This was our 7th year, and yeah, we have a lot.
trying to get rid of the funk,
Yeah.
because all the bad stuff is in there.
And we're seeing a lot of frames that are packed with bee bread.
Yeah.
And it's old bee bread,
Yep,
probably in there.
Well, and I mean, we thought, oh, we'll take it out, freeze it, and give them extra in the spring, but it's protein. It doesn't last, so there's no point.
It doesn't, so it'll last, but it doesn't have nutritional
Yeah,
value.
yeah.
That's a big thing that Randy harps on in that Fat Bees article, is that pollen doesn't last. So I always kind of cringe when people ask me they want to buy pollen for health benefits or to do these types of things, because it's really hard to keep pollen fresh and clean and in good shape. Like, it can get funky really quick. So that's why the bees make bee bread. They put a little saliva with it, it ferments. And it ferments to protect it, right? Just like we make pickles, these cucumbers won't last on your counter. But if you make a jar of pickles, they're gonna last through the winter, and you'll be eating pickles in January, February, whatever. So same thing for the bees. They need to put that pollen up in a manner that's gonna store for the winter. They're also fermenting so that it becomes digestible. So it's just like for those of you that have chickens or hogs or cows or any of that stuff, dogs, even whatever, they have to cook soybeans to make them digestible, to make that feed. So they're the same things. They're fermenting it to make it digestible, so they can use that protein and be able to turn it into fat stores and tissue and all that fun stuff. So you're making your combined, you're saying these girls are not doing real well, and are switch that queen on, or combine them with a strong hive. You're making sure everybody's balanced and good and strong. What else? Now it's go time, September,
Well, if you're talking, is it time to start configuring the hive for winter? Like James Rapp says, we use these, we go from a single deep, we put another deep above it. And these are more or less the size of a frame. And it's nice and tight inside the box. And so what we do is we put most of the brood in the bottom box. What? Yeah, well, if there's 6 frames of brood.
So we're reducing from 10 frames to 6.
5.
And going vertical. And the reason for that is because it moved up during the winter. And so running a single D, it didn't make sense to us for them to have all this resources on the outside where they can't get to it. So we put in, we could have moved them into nukes, but that requires additional woodenware. So this was a way to take the woodenware that they're already in and just make it smaller and then put it in a box.
And the reason why we have 2 different types of foam board is this is the one that goes right against the bees. Because we found out when we only use these,
They chew 'em.
they chew the heck out of them.
Yeah, they sure do.
So,
They do, they chew 'em up.
so, but it's less work to take a utility knife and cut this and fit it in. And I mean, if you want to buy a new piece of foam every time for those 2 that are against the bees, you can, but
It's mostly up here.
Yeah.
They chew it all up in the mud.
but this is
You guys are overwintering in 2 deeps,
right.
but they're narrowed down to 5-6 frames per deep.
And the other thing I like about this is as I'm, dealing with hives where I'm trying to get things expanding in the spring, I might take this one out, just give them 2 frames in the bottom so they'll build 2 new frames rather than. So,
Expand the incrementally. That there's, science is not a good word, because I don't know if there's science, but there's a lot of evidence out there that says that people who do double D nukes, it's a very successful way to get bees through the winter. That it is, I've had a lot of good success in the past when I was doing nukes, running double deep nukes through the winter,
yeah,
and I would actually take several nukes and stick them together, and I would wrap that foam stuff around the outside of those nukes. I do 2 wraps of those, so they would help keep each other warm, plus they had the bubble
Yeah.
insulation on the outside.
And then
And,
you can wrap them back. Then when you open them in the spring, they're all right there along
Yeah.
the seams of the 2.
yes,
and
And 3.
the other thing I found, having these, we call them follower boards. And the thing we found about follower boards is if we have to buy a package or, deal with a split or something, and we don't have a whole lot of room, I've set these follower boards up so that I put 3 frames in because I'm still concerned about it being cold in the spring. And then there's 7 frames follower board. And then you can expand it out so that they can manage their heat better that way. It's an opinion. There's 10 other opinions, but
now, whenever you do that, you're putting, are you putting your frames down the middle and you're putting foam on each side
On each
with the
side.
wood on the inside on each side?
yeah,
Okay. So that's just exact, so that other one, are you actually having 3 pieces of foam in there? Is that what makes
yeah,
up your
if
space?
we only use 5 frames in the middle,
Then there's
then
gonna be
we've got,
5 pieces of.
yeah,
foam.
so there'll be 2 wooden, so a wooden one here and a wooden one here.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 of these on the west side.
Oh, so
one on
that's
the
only
east.
taking up one.
Yeah,
one
this-
frame.
Frame width.
This is 1.5 inches. See, it's like, what, maybe
I guess you've got.
an
to
1/8
do
inch
this.
thicker than this one here, which is,
This is exactly frame size.
so.
So when are you guys putting those in your house?
October, after we pull the goldenrod super off. then we get them into winter configuration and feed the heck out of them.
So when you say feed the heck out of them, if we were to throw a number at it, how much feed are you putting in the hive?
Well, we have the 2-gallon square feeders.
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's talk about what kind of feeders you guys
We
use.
use, 5 top, so it goes above the inner cover. And, we have several different kinds. Most of the time, we use a donut feeder that is round and they come up through
It's
the.
like a butt cake
Yeah,
pan.
Yeah,
they come up through the inner cover hole, and then there's a cup that fits over the middle of this donut. And the bees go up in that, and then they,
And it's covered.
yeah, it's covered. So they don't get down into the donut part unless,
I like it in the spring because of when there's rapid fluctuations. If you were to use mason jars, you know, it'll drip that hard. Where this, they just come up and then they go over the hill and get their drink.
So is that, you use that exclusive, well, you use it that and hive top feeders.
we don't, well, we have one of the big square ones, you know. You use
We
that,
got
I don't
two,
use that much. No. Those are too heavy for me. I don't like to move those.
So when you're doing your inspection, it's picking that up,
Right.
moving it to the side, you're gonna still, and then you get your bees wet. and-
So I still prefer, for fall especially, I prefer the quart jars. So I'll put a gallon on the time.
Okay, so about, if you were to throw a thumb in the wind wild guess, about how much feed are you packing on that hive to prepare for winter?
How much they'll
Right, so,
take.
but how are you doing that? Tell me,
Um,
explain to them how you know how much they'll take.
Okay, so.
How are you
we make
balancing
2 to
the
1
space and
syrup
feed?
And fill the quart jars, and then the feeder has 4 holes in it where you invert you probably all seen those, invert the quart jars in there. And we keep filling them until they don't take anymore. And then we'll switch over to the sugar.
So you're looking in your comb is what I heard you indirectly say. So you're saying, I wanna
Well,
make sure
more like we're
that.
just watching the bees to see how much they're taking, and then he weighs the hives to see what kind of weight they've got.
Yeah, I
And
like,
then hope and pray,
Do you have trouble with them getting nectar about with the feed?
no,
oh, well,
not with the fall. We don't.
if you're, the
Because we
hives that
take
you're
all of our-
dealing with,
All of our, we take all of the goldenrod, honey, where most people are leaving that on the hives.
we're not going to ever leave goldenrod supers on top of the hives again, because first of all, of the solids that James talked about, that's also in that video that Bob Benny presented. But it's better to let them have, you know, the sugar syrup.
And it pays for your
Maybe
feed.
it's like means that when,
It's,
is that winter solstice or it's before that, depends on the.
I've never seen them see a date stop. I've always had them stop based on what's going on in the cold. That's been my experience.
a gentleman has a question.
We have 2 deeps on our hive. We also have 2 honey supers on there. We're gonna have the goldenrod. When I go to take those supers off though, am I gonna just be crowding my bees in too small a space? When I do that, what do I need to do about that? Do I need to put something back on there? Because I mean, they're crowded now.
But the,
yeah. Well, what's gonna happen is as the fall comes on, you're gonna have a lot of those bees die off. And there's only so many, the queen is gonna pull back. And as she gears down, a lot of those forager bees are going to die off. And so they are going to naturally make that hive, make their cluster the right size. These are altruistic, and if it comes down to it, and there's too many bees going into the fall and they know it, it'll bees that will leave the hive and die. They will adjust the hive to the size that they needed to do, and they know what they need according to the resources they have, and that's what they'll do.
I
No,
don't have to worry
also,
about swarming because I've made it too crowded.
If she's got room to lay,
You do up until like probably about it depends on the season, but like second or third week of September, that's for real, yeah, they can swarm on you.
Cause we had one last year, one of our hives absconded. End of September or somewhere in there, they were just gone.
Well, that could be
After
different.
we'd taken the
Yeah, that
supers
was-
off and we inverted the hive, which was probably the wrong thing to do at that time of year.
That could be different, so that is something that I do, I just flip a whole bunch of boxes. I flipped and moved the brood down to the bottom and then put the empty box above it. As I'm pulling supers, I did that just recently myself. Cause I want that brood I want to push her down to the bottom and then I want her to weigh up everything, to make a bunch of bees. But I'm doing it because I'm robbing from strong hives to supply my weak hives. So all my splits and stuff like that I need to shore up and make everybody equal. I need that brood from those ones that are gangbusters. And so, you guys do too, if you have 2 hives or 3 hives or whatever, so you can do the same thing, you can make sure you're balancing all that out through that whole. So as far as the bees go, that's where your inspections come in, you gotta use your eyes and look at what's going on inside of that hive, you gotta say, how many frames of bees do I have? I know what you meant, but when you said it, I got nervous when you say how many seams of bees. Because I don't ever trust what I see. I don't trust until I look at the frame and see what's going on, because based on how many eggs, larvae, and brood I have, I know exactly my hive is gonna be in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, based on what's going on inside of it. So if I got, for example, when we went through Max hives, all of his boxes had like 8+ frames of dark brood in it. He was in trouble in a week. So that's why we put another super on there for him, to be able to make sure that they weren't getting nectar bound, like you said, they weren't gonna get honey bound down in here. They had plenty of room to put that nectar up there. And he was putting drawn coma. He wasn't putting frames of foundation, which they may not touch, right? And they'll just get honey bound and swarm. So there's a lot of things that you're looking for when you're doing those inspections. You wanna make sure that how much larva, how much brood you got, and then moving things around between your hives to balance them out. Your mites are managed, hopefully, so that, so when you say they absconded, I don't think they swarm. I
We
think
don't
they
know, they were
absconded because
born.
they had a
That's all
problem.
we know.
Right, I think they absconded because they had a problem.
Yeah.
They probably had a high threshold of mites, or the queen was failing long before, and they said, the hell with it, we're moving on somewhere else, like, because they're gonna die.
At that same time, they were in old deeps that were not sealed up well. I had other deeps that I had painted, and they've been painted a while. I switched
Yeah.
and put them in new boxes, and I wondered if that didn't have an effect on it, whether they smelt too new to them and they didn't like it.
There's probably lots of things that could have been causing that, right? So there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah,
Anyway, we go back to the first thing we talked about. You didn't write down what you were doing. Now you know this year what you did, right?
Yeah.
So that you can say, well, we're not gonna do that. We
Right.
might do part of it, but we're not gonna do the whole.
So
like,
there's nothing wrong with flipping the 2 deeps in
No,
this time of year.
no, I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are.
My thoughts are, as far as, and it's actually a little later, like September, end of the goldenrod flow for us. But what we try to do is we try to get all our brood in the bottom, and we try to get honey-filled frames above those.
That makes sense.
And I'm thinking that some of those supers that we had on top, they may not have been full of nectar all the way to the bottom. And I know bees won't move right or left to get honey. So you'll find a dead out where there's this big, huge pile of bees in the center. And on the same frame, there's honey on both sides. You're like, and I don't know how crazy they are about crossing a a dry barrier of, even though it's drawn comb. I don't know how they like dry. You know, that might have been part of my problem this last winter. Is there might have
There's a
been
lot of variables, right? And so there's a lot of things going on there. So we've made our combined, we've made our splits where we've fed our splits, so everything's strong going into winter. We've started to make sure we flipped our boxes so that we got the bees down on the bottom, we got space on top to fill with feed, whether that's coming in from nectar, whether that's coming in from syrup, combination of both, whatever. Now, we're gonna go into, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I put all my brood down at the bottom because I'm treating, then I put the formic crow on, so the brood is right by the formic crow.
That's a great point too. That's what I'm doing right now.
Right,
is
yeah,
As I'm pulling my honey supers, I'm consolidating my bees down and squishing them because I want to get the most effectiveness of my treatments on it. So if I got 5 boxes, even if I'm using formic, that's okay to use with the honey super. I need to use more formic to make sure that I have a good dose that's going to cause harm to those mites. Right, so I would much rather squeeze them down during that dirt and get a good mite kill at that time. So that they're strong, to build strong bees going into winter and to be able to work that nectar, that fall nectar flow and or move syrup to where I want them to. So it's always planning ahead, like you said, the 6 weeks, right? So you're always looking ahead and figuring out what you need to do to be prepared for that date and time. So now we're getting into late September, early October. Now we're gonna go into, let's talk about this, and this. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just come over there real quick. And actually, I want to pull this up so they can see. If you don't mind. The other camera.
Yeah. she's got a camera though.
Oh, does she? Oh, okay, so she can see it. Okay, so what I do, last year, in place of this, I had a foam super up here. And that was my insulation last year. For some of them, this was the others, okay? What I do in this configuration, is what I'm gonna do this year, is I'm gonna put my mouth guard on. This is, you can get these things at Menards or Lowe's, and normally it's L-shaped, and that's the step you always see where your garage door opener is hung by it, and I just flatten it out and cut it to size.
You can also use a drywall corner.
Yeah.
And that cuts really easy. You can sometimes even take the scissors.
Yeah, and so that's what I do. And then I will take, earlier in the year, I typically just have this, and I use frame feeder. And so I will feed my bees through the frame feeder. That also allows me to control, because I do a combination where I'm at, because I'm kind of isolated. I will put out buckets of sugar water, and then I will also do frame feeders. If I'm getting pretty full, I won't feed the frame feeder, and I'll let them eat from the buckets.
So the buckets open feed.
Yeah,
Explain that a little bit.
buckets are open feeding. I take a bucket of sugar water, I put some straw on top of it, and they'll eat it down. And it also gives them something to do, go out. And it doesn't cause rotting. I can take it 100 yards or so away from the rest of the hives, and I don't have any problems with rotting that way. And it's straight sugar water. And if I've got a hive that's light, I'll fill the 1 gallon feeder and feed the buckets, so they can get it front. They can get more access to more of it. But if you buy frame feeders, don't buy 1 gallon, buy 1.5. The 1 gallon, you can't get 9 frames in here without it being so tight. It's hard to get it in there. If you get the 1.5 gallons, you can do 8 frames, and then the 1.5 gallons feeds, fills up the space more naturally. Okay. And so then what I do is I take, I'm going to take these guys here. The reason why I like these, I got these from Man Lake. There's foam inside of them. You can take these in the spring. You can take these on and off to do your inspections and get down into that bottom box and then put it back on. I keep these on into May if I'm still got real cool nights, because I can keep these on and it'll help to keep the brood warm. through some of these real cold nights. If the queen is really stretching out her brood nest and she's really going for it, you have this on here even in May, early May. And certainly in April, this will help protect her brood. And so she won't have a bunch of chill brood if she has a real cold night. And so I take this and I basically put this on. So we've got insulation here to keep her warm, okay? I've got this here, this is what I said, I put down newspaper and I put sugar on top of it. And what you want to do is do layers of sugar and spray water with a spray bottle on it. So you wet the sugar as I go. And so I'll do 3 or 4 layers of it, depending on how thick it is. And
Is that sitting on top of the inner cover?
that's sitting right here. Yeah.
So it's right on top of the box.
And it's got an upper entrance. So basically, I don't shut the entrance down, way down on the roof of my house, where I don't have to worry about mice. I don't even put this on. I don't shut them down tight. And so then there's a nice layer of sugar up here. And as moisture comes up, and comes up to the top of the hive, that sugar is available. Sugar is hygroscopic, just like honey. It'll suck in that water, and it'll help to maintain moisture in the hive. Okay, and I put this guy on here, keeping the top of it warm. And I put this on. So what I have is I've got warm, and I've got a band of cold. So if you get a lot of moisture in the hive, it'll come up, it'll hit that band of cold on the walls, condense and fall down the sides instead of hitting the bees. It won't get too cold up here as the warmth comes up. And that's what happens is it gets cold at the top, drips down onto the bees, and it kills the bees. If it gets cold around the edges, it can condense and run down the side of the hive, it won't hurt the bees with it. And so that's why I do it.
So I think just to make sure, Reva asked a good question, I want to make sure I said the right thing. So you're pulling your inner cover out and putting that feeding shim in place of it, right? You're not putting that above your inner cover, right?
Me? No, I'm using a frame feed.
Right. But the shim, you're pulling your inner cover out, right? And this is
My
going.
inner cover, well, oh, yes, oh, I'm sorry, I don't run inner covers.
Right.
I don't typically.
That's what I wanted to make sure everybody.
This is a lot of times my inner cover even well into the spring. This is what I leave this on, and they get used to, they kind of get used to coming in and out of here.
So an important thing to see here, in case you didn't notice it, is this right here.
That's what I was looking.
So, and then see that on the. So there's a hole
1 moment.
where it's,
Wow.
yeah. So this is cut out, so the bees can get through. What?
Those holes are small? Screens too
These-
small?
That's quarter inch is what that is.
So yeah,
I've been paranoid before, and sometimes I'll cut out like 4 of them to make a bigger hole here and there. Just in case, just to make sure that queen can get through.
right. So the,
Oh, you want the queen to get up there?
That if she has to, if the cluster goes up there and the cluster gets on top and the queen can't get through, she's dead.
that's a good topic of one person does it one way and another person does it another way. But I want to make sure you understand, this is an entrance right here, because there's no screen, right? So some of these, this one that was over here, there was actually screen, oh yeah, on your quote box, there's holes, but there's screens on there so that robbers can't get in. But it allows moisture and ventilation to happen. So here, this is an entrance, right? So the bees can come through here and go out and come in. And there's some schools of thought that say upper entrance is a good idea, and there's schools of thought, just like everything in bees. There's people that say yes for upper entrances, and there's people that say no. You have to make your own choices for that. Traditionally, it was you want an upper entrance because the bottom one can get covered in snow or dead bees or whatever other bad things could happen here. I'm kind of switching myself over to, I like the idea of not having an upper entrance, but I don't know. It's science, everything with beekeeping is science experiment. So I wanted to make sure you saw this hole here for the bees to be able to get through. Plus the bees can go through this as well, but this is an upper entrance to allow them to be able to get out.
Isn't that big enough though for a mouse?
Potentially, yes. Actually, I have a funny thing. I had a mouse dig inside of one of these this spring. And it was laying up there, dead as a doornail. They took care of her, no problem. It's funny though, how they won't, that's the only one I've ever had come up there. And that was fairly late in the spring, wasn't it, Cynthia?
Yes.
It was, I was really surprised that a mouse got up in there.
I'm a big fan of mouse violence.
Yeah.
On my hive, something that I do is I put hardware cloth, I'll staple over everything. I don't do these. I just staple hardware cloth over here in place of it. There's a bazillion ways to do this. There's a lot of solutions. I have a huge problem with mice. So the mice, I've had them chew through the corner of the box to get in there. I've had them get in regardless. I've had them chew through the hardware cloth. I've seen them do everything. So I try and do what I can to keep the mice
That's a
out.
good idea, though, but I just need to go ahead and do that this year. And it's just to put that 1/2 inch, because you can use 1/2 inch hardware cloth here. This is 1/4 inch in here, and you put your right close. You're getting close to the size of the 20.
Hardware.
You won't go any smaller.
It's this stuff right here. This is hardware cloth right here. So what he's saying is this is 1/4 inch. He's using 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch hardware cloth, and you could use that as an entrance protector. You can use it for covering these holes, whatever. That way the bees can get through it, but mice can't.
Yeah.
And ground squirrels.
And yeah, especially up here, they can flood in and out because whenever they're going potty, they're gonna flood out. I mean, there's gonna be a storm of bees and dew in here. Sorry. Yeah, bees and dew in here, and they can get in and out fast if it's cold. Because a lot of times they're pushing that temperature because they gotta go.
So we got an online question.
Okay, can you put a queen quilt on top of a queen insert?
I don't know what a queen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did they mean like a quilt?
Quilt box.
Like he was talking about?
Not sure.
What about-
Sarah, can you, turn your mic on. Yeah, the box with the wood chips. A box with the wood chips.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's called a quilt box.
Quilt box.
So here you can see in this, there's holes drilled here. So, and then he's got, number 8 hardware cloth over this, so bees can't get through it. Right, so that's mostly for rock.
Which is 8 inch.
Yeah, 8 inch.
So I think she's asking if that can be put on top of
Yes,
inside the foam.
this would then go on top of this, and then that can go
And
on.
that would be exactly what we do.
Yeah, that's what.
With sugar, yeah,
And that's what we use for our smoker fuel.
either
next
that
year.
or we'll put a shim.
The
on
shim's right over there.
to allow the sugar bricks to go in.
So we got 5 minutes left. 5-minute warning.
What do you do different
So
now?
number one thing you want to make sure everybody hears. You can start. Jen.
Number one thing?
Number one thing about winter. Most important for some we missed.
Prayer.
We like to look at the oxalic acid. And I think we're gonna
It's not
do
your
it
turn
before.
yet. It's her turn.
The most important thing, think ahead, yeah, I remember my first year, I'm like, October, it's still warm, they're still gonna be making babies and, yeah, I know. They're still gonna be capping, honey and. I think that was a big lesson I learned.
So it's half the
Think
team.
ahead.
All right, now the other half of the team saying,
Well, make sure you get, we like to make sure we get an oxalic acid treatment when the brood production is at its lowest. And last year, we wanted to do it after we came back from Hive Life Conference. The first part of January, COVID took care of that. I think this year we're gonna try to shoot for right around just before Christmas.
Randy Oliver says winter solstice is the perfect time to do an oxalic acid because the queen has stopped laying and so you're broodless. And you can start with a clean slate in the spring. But that's December 21st and our house is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think,
at that time.
I would say my rule of thumb is about when I'm putting mouse guards on is when is probably a pretty good time for it. You might have to do two.
It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt to do two.
Thanksgiving weekend, while you have that extra day off is a good time.
Bob Benning, he talks about doing the oxalic acid at that time twice. He says you get 90% kill
Yeah.
on the first one. He says you go back, you get 90% of that 10%.
All right, so Matt, your last bit of advice or something we didn't talk about. What's your thing?
In the winter,
Yeah,
one of my big concerns, assuming that you've treated for mites and everything else, is moisture in the hive. Try to be aware of that because, and I've used those jar feeders that you can put inside. And sometimes the weather, you think the weather's gonna be a certain way and you'll get a real drop in temperature and then a fluctuation, and what happens, it'll drip down in. And then you're in trouble because they're wet. So, and then the other part is I have a box that's probably in between those two top ones. And, as far as depth, and I think you can, when you put those holes in there for ventilation, that's really important. And the hole that I put in is probably 3/8 of an inch or something, so that the bees can leave if they want, but it seems to help. Early on, I had a lot of trouble with moisture, getting that thing in there. And that has addressed that issue quite a bit.
that's my number one problem.
And then the other part is giving, Ken, you have, uses wood chips up in there to get it, whatever you can put in there to soak up that moisture, add as a wick. I'll open up a hive in the spring and I'll put little white paper plates in there, put loose sugar on it. And you'll open them up and you'll find this real fine chewed stuff. They'll chew the paper even because it's got some sugar in it because there was moisture in there. So going into winter, that's one of my big concerns, is to try to mediate moisture getting in there, because if it drips on them, they're done.
How do you know you have a problem? So you've had a problem. What signs do you see that make you think, oh?
Yeah, so big ones, the big ones to look for is you'll see streaking down your comb. Now, who's streaking? You'll see lines down the comb, right? So that's from that liquid dribbling down. That's one sign, is you'll see these streaks down the comb. You'll see mold.
Mhm.
You'll smell it. You'll smell moisture. You'll see it. Like what I had last year, it was so bad I saw pools of water inside of the hive, right on top of the dead bees. On top of the dead bees. And
I saw icicles when I looked,
I saw,
and the hive survived.
when I went in January, I saw some icicles as well when I was putting in food. So there's a lot of things that
You'll see wet on the bottom board. And that's one thing about my bottom boards on the back corners. I've got 3/8 inch holes on those back corners. Because all my hives aren't tipped forward. There's one of them tipped backwards.
That's a really good tip.
Definitely, and having those holes back there, that water will run back and out.
I do that too. My hives are on
I
pallets.
think that's where I got it from.
And I put in, I'll take and drill a 70 millimeter hole, like a mason jar hole, and I'll staple a piece of number 8 hardware cloth over it, just so they get a little bit of ventilation, and then also none of my stuff is balanced and level and all that stuff, so the water will run off. Well, they're sitting in the middle of the fields, and I can't I can't sit there and make sure that it's graded perfectly and all that stuff, so. I gotta put them where the landowner tells me to put them, so that, you know, I might be sitting on top of rocks, or I might be sitting in here, it just depends, right, so. You gotta make it work.
You know, I think,
When you have as many hives as people like him, you don't have time to level all your hives. It's impressive.
You're not gonna level them, either, that's the other thing, is like, as things get wet and heave and do all that, your stuff
It's gonna
moves,
change.
right? So there's a lot of things, and Matt, did you have anything else? So
well, I
like
was just gonna say, sometimes it's a balance with letting bees be bees. I mean, I'm not like no treatment, all that sort of thing, but they've survived somehow without beekeepers all these years. And so we can do all these things and we want to do them for animal husbandry. But on the other hand, at some point, I mean, they're resilient, they're amazing creatures, you know? And so we do what we can, but at some point, we gotta let bees be bees, you know?
All right, Team Sugar Dagger.
I kind of go along with both of these guys. Treat for mites, make sure your mite levels are as low as you can. If you've got healthy bees, they can stand a lot. If you've got a healthy cluster, a healthy queen, a healthy hive, they can take a lot. And I mean, you know, we talked about the moisture. I had, hives, not last year, but the year before. That's why I put those holes in the back, because in the spring I come in and there's water inside on the bottom of the hive. But the cluster was alive and it was healthy because the cluster was healthy. And that is so important. It's just like anybody else, you know. There's a lot of people running around that had COVID. And if you're healthy, you got a lot better chance of weathering COVID and going through it, sailing through it.
Yeah, so one thing that I had too last year, and I'm not picking on her, but your issue that you had where you threw out your bees, I did the same exact thing. Is that I've never seen bees be that quiet and chill and dormant. I thought it was a pile of dead bees, and they weren't a pile of dead bees. It was a pile of live bees, and they weren't on comb. They didn't have anything to be on. They shouldn't have been where they were at. They were alive, and I threw them out. And I came back.
There's nothing that feels worse.
Some of the hives moved back in. They came back in. They were able to because of the warm weather. I lost a bunch that I threw out that weren't dead that I thought were dead.
They're just, it's what they look like
I've
when.
never seen that
you
like I
open
did
up
last
the hive
year.
and it's frozen, or, you know, they're dead, you know, they're all on their thing.
They go into a state of what's called torpor. And it's like a suspended animation, and they literally do look like they're dead. I've seen 2 or 3 videos on the internet where this guy's starting to throw these bees out because he thinks they're dead, and they're sitting out there in the sunlight and they're starting to move, and
And
he's
that's what
going,
happens, they just, the sunlight warms them up and all of a sudden you see them moving like.
yeah, they call it torpor.
Something else. Don't be afraid of the cold temperature. These handle the cold just fine.
Yeah.
It's,
As
the
long as
moisture, it's totally the moisture,
as long as they're strong and well fed,
yeah.
they can deal with cold.
Don't tear the hive apart, but you can peek in and peek from the top.
Just, you know, they have a harder time with the fluctuations. If they've gone up into the top to feed and then they can't get back into carbon, that might be a problem, but our sub-zero temperatures as a whole, we don't insulate other than the follower boards. And we have, screen bottom boards. They're not completely open because our hive stands are solid, so it's screen bottom board, space, and solid, but yeah, it's not the cold.
Okay, Ken just said, peek in. Don't be afraid to peek into your hive during the winter. You can see if they need more food.
That's why we do our sugar. This doesn't go in the hive. This is just the mold. And so once it's dry and a sugar cube, then I take it off and I make another one. And when I go out and check in the winter time, I'm like, oh,
And he puts it right on top of the bees,
yeah.
right on top of the bees, not to the left, not to the right, not to the front, not the back, literally on top of the bees.
I look,
Sometimes you gotta come.
yeah, I look for where the cluster is and, you know, they may have eaten up the prior sugar cube. That I just sort of push that prior sugar cube and
But if you didn't crack that lid and look, they're gonna die. So the cold, I think people have this thought in their head that there's a radiator inside of that hive, and there's not. Right? They shiver, they eat the calories and make heat. Right? So cracking that lid and looking in there and doing, you're not letting out, there's no furnace going on inside of there. Keeping that hive some magic 90 something degrees inside of there. That box is cold as well, so they're making heat. But if you don't give them feed to make heat, they will die.
Mhm.
And it's on you that they die. So open that hive, put feed on top of them, go out and do it. And I like it because I get to go visit with my bees when it's cold out and when I'm bored in the winter time and I need something to do. So I go out and look usually once a month or so, usually about every 4 to 6 weeks max. I'll go out and look and I'll feed them and go see what my losses look like. And if they're dead, I'll start cleaning the box out because it's much easier to clean a box when they're cold and all that stuff. So I'm looking in my hive all the time through winter and making sure they have feed, because if they don't have feed, they're dead. That's it. So wrapping up right now, so any other questions you guys have, use our Facebook page, get on there, post questions, shake some hands out in the parking lot because we gotta go, but need some people to go work bees with somebody else because you're gonna learn a lot of tricks. You wanna go play with shiver daggers, go hit them up and say, I wanna go play with the bees. I wanna learn about this system. I wanna see this. You wanna go play with the sing. Mac always needs help up at the ranch. If you wanna go work bees, he would love to have you come help out. You can just hit him up. He's one of the nicest humans you're ever gonna meet, so don't be afraid of him. He would love to have your help. Learn tricks from everybody else and go play and learn and see their hardware, see the kind of hive tools they use, the smokers, so that you don't buy something you don't like, or you don't waste your time and money and effort on it. Go learn from their stuff. So go make friends, get on that Facebook page, ask questions, post pictures of your bees, get on there and do it. Don't let your bees die. Thanks. See you next month.
yeah, Pete, when you were talking about, we feed like that after. Well, we're giving them 2 to 1. And they just, because they're doing 2 to 1, they're not making babies. They're just, we're trying to get them to attach their story. And then they started packing everything out of it. And there was just no space in the way. I know they put it a little bit. Yeah, it's after the October fall and probably already September fall. Where you probably already have a fall. Yeah, I'm just wondering. Usually there's a container or two that needs to be.